Yeah. I see.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just going to allow some people to wait for some people to hop on, but we'll get started in just a minute. Thank you.
No.
Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Good. How are you? For those who don't know me, my name is Kathleen Voker, and I'd like to welcome you all to the first of what we hope is many virtual events. I'm the co-event chair for the John Howard Association Young Professionals Board. We've been working really hard to pivot our normally in-person spring fundraiser into a virtual format for you to all enjoy. And we're working on other types of virtual events to participate in later in the year. So keep a lookout for those. I shared some of them on the slides earlier, but JHA's website is the best place to stay up to date on all events, get involved, donate, and learn more about JHA's work on criminal justice reform. JHA's website is thejha.org. That's thejha.org. Now on to today's main event. Thank you everyone that donated, and to our anonymous donor and Jenner and Block LLP for sponsoring Toast to Justice. I wanted to note that we are recording this event and we'll post it to JHA's website after the event has concluded for those that maybe weren't able to attend tonight. We will allow some time for questions at the end, so please send them in through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Normally when we host our in-person Toast to Justice, we try to have speakers that can give their personal experiences on Illinois' prison system. And we wanted to make sure that even though we can't be together right now, you can still hear their stories. For me personally, I got involved with JHA because of the personal stories I heard at past events. I hope you're as inspired as I was after listening to today's speakers, Colemon Jefferson and Katie Pieper. Colemon was incarcerated for 30 years in the Illinois prison system and worked as a paralegal in the prisons for 22 of those years. Following his release in 2017, he began working at Hardin House, a halfway house on the south side of Chicago. He currently works as a recovery coach, health manager, and is working towards his Certified Alcohol Drug Counselor, or CADC certification. Our moderator is Katie Pieper, JHA's prison monitor. Katie joined JHA as the Prison Response Unit Manager in 2018. As prison monitor, Katie manages prison communications and correspondence from letters received from prisoners and calls and emails from their loved ones. These communications provide JHA with valuable information used in advocacy work, both the individual correctional facilities and in the system-wide reform. Thank you, Katie and Coleman, for speaking with us today. I'm going to turn it over to you, Katie.
Great, thank you, Kathleen. Coleman and I have had a couple conversations prior to this, and we can both be very chatty. He's got lots of information, and I hope there's a lot of great questions here at the end. So I'm going to dive right in. All right, Coleman.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Fine.
Okay, so Kathleen, in your introduction, shared that you were a paralegal, or what is more commonly referred to as a law clerk in the Illinois prison system, and that you held that role for over 20 years. For the sake of the audience, before we go any further, can you explain the difference between what a paralegal is and what a law clerk is within the Illinois Department of Corrections, or IDOC, context?
Well, if you take it into the prison context, we are actually paralegals. However, we are being called law clerks.
Your wife just needs to turn to mute. Perfect.
We're being called law clerks because of the level of respect that they hope to be missing. Paralegal has a lot of respect, and you can take that position outside of the institution and probably become quite successful with it. However, but the prisoner decided that we shouldn't be known as paralegals because it would lend an air of professionalism to us and what we do. So they put us in paralegal classes with Lewis University when I was in Stateville. However, when we get our certificates, we're law clerks.
Okay.
Okay.
So they're essentially they're similar in nature, different in title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different in title, and that difference is really important too, because like I say, it's a matter of respect, professional respect, and so forth. And then it's a matter of being able to use it. I think I told you before, I was trying to get my paralegal certificate from Lewis, because without that, you know, it becomes a little difficult to say, well, I'm a paralegal. And I don't have a paralegal certificate, although I went to class and I got grades to pass and passed it. So it's the department decided that we shouldn't have that air of professionalism behind us or a title like that. So therefore we became law clerks, and we didn't get a university certificate. We have an institutional certificate.
Okay, but so for people in the audience, they can kind of interchangeably use.
Yeah, they can interchangeably use it because
description of what a law clerk then in IDOC actually does, what you did, kind of the job.
Okay, on paper, a law clerk provides all kinds of assistance to prisoners, to preparing documents for them, to helping them research and prepare documents for themselves, and so forth. That's on paper. In actuality, we can't do any of that. You know, there was a memo in 2003, and it told us that we couldn't even help guys determine their deadline dates. And that was kind of shocking to me, because deadlines are the most frequent reason that cases are dismissed, the failure to adhere to court deadlines. So if you're telling us we can't tell guys their court deadlines, so in effect you're telling us we can't help guys at all.
But the job on paper should be helping.
It should, the opposite, the very opposite, because on paper, the rule, the institutional rule in school district, I think school district 428, rule was that law clerks would assist other guys into preparation of documents and assist them into research and everything. We did everything for guys there. So that went on for a while, and then it stopped, like I think in 2002, 3, that it was really being enforced that we could no longer do that, you know. And if you did it, you were going to segregation. Yeah.
Definitely want to get more into that here in a minute. But first, I want to step in with our JHA hat here. At the John Howard Association, we recognize the importance of people having access to legal materials that they need to mount effective criminal appeals and challenge unconstitutional conditions of confinement that they may find themselves in the courts. By talking to people during our monitoring visits and through so many of the letters that we've received over the years from people incarcerated across the state, we know that access can be limited. Access to the law library can be limited by a variety of ways, and this is before COVID. So we know that people with upcoming court dates are frequently prioritized, effectively preventing people with tolling appeal deadlines from getting scheduled to go into the law library. We know the amount of time allotted may not be sufficient to really find what they need. We know materials may be outdated, ripped out of books, not being provided by staff, hidden behind a desk, however that may happen. And we know also that once you've found what you're looking for, which there's a lot of challenges to get to that place, it can cost 10 cents per side, per page to print anything to take it back to your cell or dorm. And so we know there's lots more ways even beyond that that can prevent meaningful access to the law library. But a huge part of having access to case law and information about your rights is obviously being able to understand them, to know what's relevant, how to interpret the case law, how to apply it to your own case, how to understand what your rights mean in your particular situation. And that's where a law clerk can come in, obviously.
Yes, that's exactly.
My question for you is, what do you think is at stake for people being able to access the law library and services like you provided and other law clerks provide?
Well, a loss of their right. They would actually, they're losing their right to access to courts because they don't have the assistance that's needed in order to access the court. I think I told you once before that a lot of the guys who are working in law libraries now, they are not qualified to actually work in the law library. And you get guys that come in and—
Staff or prisoners who—
both ways, because staff can't help you either. The staff is forbidden from giving you any legal advice. I mean, any. So they hire paralegals, but those paralegals can't tell you anything. You know, so you have to know that, or you have to have a clerk, or you have to have someone there that help you. And I thought I would tell you once the story of how I learned how to use the law library. I used to go to the library with cigarettes. And I used to give guys cigarettes in the library to tell me where stuff was and how to find stuff in the library. And I did that in the county jail. And when I first went to the institution in '89, I used to take, every time I went, I had cigarettes because I knew that I could barter my way into knowledge what's going on in that library, because the guys would take the cigarettes and show you anything.
And now tobacco is no longer allowed.
That's no longer allowed now. So, but the guys are going to lose out a lot because they don't have the assistance. And then when you have guys that do have the knowledge, they're afraid to do certain things, because if they do them and administration finds out that these guys are doing them, you know,
you mean the work of the legal clerk if they do certain tasks?
Yeah, you can only do certain things there, and that's it.
So you've mentioned that you and others have been retaliated. Why did you continue to do this work for 22 years?
I did it because when I first got locked up, I felt like my trial and everything was really, really unfair, and that I didn't have the assistance that I needed. So I took, it was a matter of me being able to come back and vindicate myself, you know. And I think I told the judge one time, if I didn't vindicate myself, then I'm gonna spend my time trying to vindicate others, you know. And so I had this ambition about myself that I wanted to do this here, because I did not like the idea that I did not understand the process enough to know how to protect myself in court. So I spent a lot of time trying to learn that. And I wasn't going to be afraid of somebody, you know, because they have already done to me. The only thing you do to me now is kill me, because you've already taken my life. You gave me 60 years. You know, the chances of me surviving for 30 years inside the prison system in the state of Illinois was a very slim chance. You know, so I might as well do whatever I think I need to do in order to try to get out myself and probably help some others get out.
In helping others, can you describe how you define being successful, or what a win was for you in this work?
I have one case that I really, Leslie Stanley. I speak on Leslie Stanley's case because Leslie had a murder conviction in which his sister testified. And this case was a win for me because when I read his case, I first read it, he had nothing but synopsis. He didn't have nothing. He had, what he filed in court was nothing. It was going to be dismissed. So I had to take his case and redo the entire case all over again, and found issues. And one of the issues was his sister testified that she looked into his eyes and she saw that he committed the crime. The prosecutor made an argument, a big argument of this in closing argument. And I argued this point in a federal court, and the federal judge agreed that the prosecutor never should have argued this, despite the fact that his sister made this statement, but she was making a statement as a professional, like a psychiatrist or psychologist or somebody. And she didn't have that ability. She was never introduced as that or nothing. So when I got that case overturned, that was a win for me because it gave me a little bit more drive too to keep going as well. You know, because this guy here, Mr. Stanley, couldn't read that well. He didn't have family out there that, you know, took care of him, all of that, you know, so, but to take his case and get it overturned on ineffective assistance of counsel was a win for me, even though they didn't take my version of the case and go through the federal system all the way. They did in habeas corpus, and on appeal from habeas corpus, they had counsel come in to represent him. But I gave birth to his case there, and I enjoyed that case very much, you know, and I had my disappointing cases too, like Lester Howard. I told you about Mr. Lester Howard. I still want to try to get Mr. Lester Howard back because I think he deserves it too. I'm
sure there are ones that haunt you. Continue.
Yeah.
So definitely. You mentioned in your win there about the reading comprehension and the understanding of the person that you were working with, the prisoner you were working with. Yeah. What, in your experience, sort of what is the educational level or comprehension of legal jargon in terms that people are showing up, prisoners are showing up with in order to try to fight their appeal or their case?
Well, it's almost nil. Most of the guys come in, they have about a 6th grade education. And as a result, they have no real knowledge of the law or anything else as it stands. And then when you couple that fact with the fact that the department is now taking away college and all of that out of there, so you don't have guys becoming educated in the law, because I think now you have to be 2 or 3 years short before you can even get in a class or something there now, you know. And when you have it like that there, you know, a guy take myself, if they had that back when I first went in, I would have never gotten out, you know, because I wouldn't have been able to educate myself enough in order to be able to figure out anything legally. So now you got guys that don't have a chance because they are not in a position to obtain education. So I can say it works to the department's benefit to have uneducated guys in there, because now these guys can't fight the system.
Let's expand on that a little bit more. So you left IDOC in 2017, right?
Yes.
Can you talk to us about how you, in your experience, how you saw the law library system, the law clerk program, how it changed over the years that from when you went in to when you came out?
Oh, And when I first went in, they had some, I mean, really good law clerks. Uh, um,
What does that look like? Really good law.
Back then, they were more like lawyers. When you went to the law library and you explained your case to somebody over there, then these guys were educated enough and legally savvy enough to take your case, prepare your case from top to bottom. I mean, they researched everything. They did it all. And they didn't have the interference that with the department as they have now. There was no interference at all because, and with the legals, with the criminal stuff, I don't think there is a lot of interference back then, maybe more so now because it leads to other things. But then it was great. As the years progressed, slowly you were being told, or you were being hampered in your ability to go to the law library, but you could get there. And now I understand that it is so difficult to get to the law library that even if you got a case, and you may not get there, you know. So I can say I got one friend that's still in there, and he does a lot of legal work. In fact, he even worked with me.
And you said he's at Dixon?
Yeah, he's at Dixon, and he's telling me that that he hasn't been to the law library in so long that he don't know when he can get there and so forth. So I've had to take and print stuff up for him here and send it in to him so that he can have it to prepare his case and stuff with. And then one of the cases that he has is the one that he and I had. We filed a civil lawsuit in state court. That was the biggest mistake I think I've ever made while I was there, to file a civil lawsuit in state court, because that lawsuit ran from 2003 all the way up to 2017.
Oh my goodness. Well, can we talk a little bit too, thinking about all the different facilities that you were in over the years, different security levels I know you've mentioned too. In your experience, which facility had the best law library system and which had the worst? And I'm really interested to hear like what factors made it the best and what components of it or factors made it the worst.
Okay, that's easy. The very best law library that I was in, it was Stateville. And that was in the 80s.
Okay.
Stateville in the 80s. They had probably the best library systems there because you had free copies, free mailing. You had access, phenomenal access. I mean, you could almost get to the law library at any time in Stateville. And it was great. Aside from Stateville, Menard, I was there in 93. And their library, it was not bad.
The maximum facility.
Yeah, the maximum facility. It was not bad because you had access to material in both Stateville and Menard. You had access to a vast amount of material there. So, and that made the law library pretty good. And you had very good law clerks in both of those institutions. And so their library systems at those times were okay, but now it's a different story now. The very worst library was Pinckneyville. And it didn't start out as the worst. It ended up as the worst.
What made it not useful or not?
Okay, I can say that's where I was when we got the memo that the law clerks are prohibited from telling residents their court deadlines. And when I got that, I was rebellious to it. I was not going to follow that. There was no way that I was going to follow that. And as a result, we filed, whose case it was? I had one client's case, and I think it was the Attorney General was trying to ascertain who was preparing this guy's documents. because his documents started to look like, you know, they were being done on a computer. In actuality, they were being done on electric typewriters. We just had various print wheels that permitted us to have different size type, you know. And so they thought it was coming off of a computer. And they shook the library down to determine, you know, what was going on and question everybody. They put the librarian, Miss Colemon Jefferson, they gave her 2 or 3 weeks off or something like that there, because they was hearing that she was preparing our documents for us on the computer, when in actuality that was not it. And when that happened, they took all of the law clerks and put us all in segregation. If you had somebody's legal documents, you got 60 days and said,
oh.
You know. So when that happened, it changed the whole dynamics of the law library completely, to where now you have guys who come to the library that work, but they don't do legal work.
Yeah. So in our conversations, you've mentioned a very distinct and concrete recommendation that you would have for reforming the law library system and the law clerk program would be to create some protections around prisoners who are serving that role. What can you expand on that, or can you talk to me about what recommendations you have for making this a more robust program and system?
Yes. If you want to have an effective law library, you have to take it out of the hands of the department. The department can't control the law library. And you would have to have some other force that has control of the law library. Of course, you have to adhere to security requirements, but they have to be true security concerns. If you remove the law library out of their hands and have some entity that's solely responsible for that, then you have a chance of changing that system, because now they can't influence what goes on into the law library, because they took security and shut the library down, and school district did not go against them at all. That anything, didn't try to. It went along with the security concerns that they laid out, which was not real ones anyway. But the legal entity into the department was one of the main sources which caused Pinckneyville to shut its library completely down. And they shut it down, and all because of concerns over litigation. Mm-hmm. You know, I understand. I'm not a proponent of litigation, meaningless litigation. I do not ride with anybody who do meaningless litigation. If you got litigation and that litigation is sincere, then hey, I'm gonna do what I can to help on it. But all of that was shut down because they did not want serious litigation coming out of those libraries, because those were challenges to the system itself. And when you challenge the system fights back. And you in there as a prisoner, you have no win.
Right.
You have no win.
So I'm hearing from you, you know, concrete or basic education, advanced degree education, you know, our certification for law clerks and paralegals, protection for those workers, and independent autonomy of law libraries. Anything else before we shift gears into the work you're doing now with reentry? Anything else you think we should know about, as we've got our captive audience here, about this program and law libraries in general?
Well, Illinois needs to update its, I think Illinois needs to update its law libraries. We are lagging so far behind. Everyone else has access to computers and so forth, and they have these channels which will permit them to do adequate research. Illinois does not. Like I say, the civilian paralegal has the access to the computer and Lexus and all of that there, but you have to have a civilian paralegal who's willing to provide you, information. Like you said earlier, you have to know what it is you're looking for. Now, if you don't have the knowledge of what it is you're looking for, you can't depend on the civilian paralegal, nor can you depend on anybody calling themselves a law clerk in there to give it to you. So probably access to computers and access to more information, which would be self-help in nature.
Yeah, we know that there are in many of the facilities in the law libraries, like little kiosks with LexisNexis, and for those of you who aren't attorneys, understanding where it's case law, finding case law in there. But they're in the law libraries physically. And I don't want to talk about this too much since haven't been in during COVID, but I do feel like we should address, the current state of people's access. And we as an organization received a letter today that I read from somebody which is one we've heard repeatedly, that some individuals have access to their tablets, and if LexisNexis or some other case law program was available to people through that would make it so, they could actually have access while they're locked in their cells for 23 hours a day or are quarantining, and that's not available to them at this point because of how the contracts are and how the technology works.
If such a thing was available, I think Mr. Harris would have told me, and I would have.
No, it's not, unfortunately, but it's something that we hear requested quite a bit, and it's maybe even more important right now when people can't physically get into the law libraries where that's the kiosk might be. So I do want to, I'm looking at time, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about your reentry work and what you've been kind of passionately or pouring your passions into since you exited. I know when you and I spoke, you had thought originally you would go down the paralegal route, and it sounds like you're still trying to get that behind the scenes, but now getting your counseling, alcohol, drug, and counseling license and all of that, and working at the Hardin House. So can you just real briefly talk about what are the different services available for people as they leave prison?
Well, you have a certain, I can go through my experience. When I first came home, I went to Prentice Place. And while I was at Prentice Place, I got introduced to the TEACH program, which is out on the south side on 103rd and Woods here in Chicago. And when I got in the TEACH program, I got job training, I got access to computer technology, I got drug counseling, and a lot of other little things, transportation and so forth, and which was all very big because without the transportation, I couldn't do a lot of other things. So with that program, Prentice Place and the TEACH program, I was able to reacclimate myself back into society with some knowledge of technology, and had some support to whereas I was not completely alone and trying to struggle through things that I had no knowledge of. And while I was at Prentice, I eventually started working at Prentice Place as an assistant manager and then manager there, and that got me into like the reentry for other guys when they come in, what it is that they would be able to do, what it is that we can help them do. So we try to get guys back in so that they can get their birth certificates, IDs, Social Security cards, line them up for jobs and stuff. And that's the networking I had there with TEACH help right with that there too, because it allowed me to like take guys and say, well, okay, well, we can get you in a job program over here at TEACH program and see what happens for you. After I had, I was at Prentice Place for about 8 months.
But you said it's longer than typical because you parlayed that into a job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did. I because I knew that I had to maintain a place. When you come out to transitional housing. Transitional housing only will house you for 60 days to 90 days. And in that time period, you have to get everything that you need, and you have to hit the ground running. That's why it's so important to have access to transportation and all that other stuff. So yeah, and when I saw that there was a need at the place that I was at, you know, I quickly tried to get myself into that place, and luckily I did, and it parlayed into a job there, which was on a stipend, not very much. I didn't care because the thing that I needed most was stability, and that's what mostly every guy that comes out, especially men. Stability is going to be your biggest key. If you stable and you got somewhere where you can go and lay your head at and you feel comfortable at, now you can work on these other things. And I did. I left Prentice Place and went to Hardin House, where I'm presently at now. And there, the program is a little bit more in depth than it was at Prentice Place. At Hardin House, they provide drug counseling, IOP and OP, which is outpatient counseling,
right.
yeah, and intensive outpatient care. They have DUI training, DUI counseling, drug counseling. They have a methadone program. They have facilities for both men and women. And I manage the men's location. My wife, she manages one of the women's location.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
So
And
in mind, can I ask you, feel free to chime in with your wife back there too. What are you seeing with the guys who come to Hardin House, or your wife with the women who are coming to Hardin House? What is IDOC currently doing to prepare people for reentry? What are their most immediate unmet needs? How are they being prepared? What are the gaps in needs that you're seeing?
IDOC is not preparing them.
Expand on that. What does that
mean? Well, when the guys that we get, the only thing that IDOC is doing is ensuring that they have a bed for 60 days, maybe 90 days. And if they stay 90 days, it depends on the house itself and to get the extensions and so forth. But I have yet to see the agents actually get involved with guys to help them get their birth certificates or anything. That's not what they do. They make sure you stay at the location that you're at. And it's up to the house managers and the owners to make that decision as to, help you further yourself. So there's a lack of assistance there. And maybe that's just for transitional houses. We're not a halfway house, so I don't know exactly how the halfway houses operate. But the transitional facilities, which requires a greater need because of the short amount of time that you have to be there, they don't get the support from parole as.
So what are the first things that you guys are having to help provide for people or help set up for people when they first come out?
Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to get them a way to eat, since we don't feed them, So we get them link cards and health care. That's immediate. And then we try to get their identification situated.
Because they don't have that coming out.
They don't have that coming out. So we have to try to help get that for them. After that, I make a real effort to try to help guys get jobs, because the guys don't have that extended hand, maybe like some of the women do, but the guys don't have it, and they're gonna have a rougher time if they don't have resources.
Once those 90 days are up.
Yeah, once the 90 days are up, because I've had, I work with PRG, and that's the Parole Resource Group. and that group handles the funds for guys staying, housing you, and so forth. And once they make the decision that they're not paying for you any longer, now you have to find somewhere you can go that that you don't have to pay if you don't have a job. So that's why jobs are crucial. Yeah. And like I say, I work with Teach Foundation. I work with Roosevelt University, and their reentry programs allow us to send guys to them or women to them, and they help get jobs and help do all the other stuff that they have to do. And I tell the guys a lot of time that, man, we're not required to do a lot of things that we do. It just so happens that you landed in a place where ownership and management tries to do this,
Can I jump in here? I know you and I spoke about, so you've talked about IDs, birth certificates, housing, link cards, food, healthcare, all that. How has, with COVID, the onset of COVID, how has that impacted the ability to connect to those much needed resources and immediate needs?
It virtually shut it down in the beginning.
Because offices were closed, or what was?
Everything was closed. Everything was closed, and therefore, you couldn't send people nowhere. And then you had places that wouldn't let you come no way because of the pandemic, and they were afraid of this and that. And but as time went on, we found ways to get around some of it. Not all of it. You still couldn't get IDs. You couldn't get Social Security cards. You could sign up for Link and healthcare, and that was your biggest thing that you could do. So if you got those things out of the way, and to the department's credit, they were allowing people to stay beyond the 60 to 90 days, and that assisted as well, and kudos to them for doing that. But I think they still should be doing a little bit more, and they should change. If I could change the program, it would automatically be 6 months. That would give a guy, especially a man, a chance. A realistic chance to do something. Because 60 days, I stayed gone 30 years, came back, and this place was virtually like Star Trek to me. Mm-hmm. You got flip phones, you got flat screen TVs, you had everything except for a phaser and sending somebody through a transporter, so I had to learn all of that. And you have to do all of that in a 60-day period.
Yeah.
Because
you can't competitive in the workplace.
Yeah. You can't operate out there without a phone and all of this other stuff.
Can you talk to me a little bit about, in your experience personally, and then what you see the guys going through who you're working with? What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about what it's like to be incarcerated, or what it's like to re-enter after being incarcerated?
People somehow think that when you're incarcerated, you're having a ball and everything is free, and you got 3 meals and you got a bed and you got a warm place. But the reality of the situation, they feed you 3 times a day, but it equals to 1 meal. When it's said and done, that's 1 meal. Okay, despite the fact that you have a bed, you may have a bed in a room with a psychotic. So you don't know who you're in the room with, and you may wake up or you may not wake up, so it's a nerve-wracking place, and people somehow think that you're locked up and you're getting this free ride. You're getting a psychological nightmare up in prison, and it's nothing like you see on TV. Those years and those days are completely gone. I mean, at one time, Stateville and had every drug, and it was, and out there in the streets was up in there. All that stuff is completely gone now. There is nothing. There are no jobs in there. You locked up 23 hours out of a day. I don't see anything fantastic about that place. You know, I fought my 30 years of fighting in there to make sure that I did not have a prison mentality.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky to still have educational opportunities. I was lucky to be able to go to the law library and work when they did let me work. And I was lucky enough to have the sense to see that I had a future, irregardless of how little or how long it would be. I had a future, and I had to prepare for it.
Can I ask then, is that what you would see as sort of the difference in making successful reentry versus the guys you see that go back? How would you define that?
If you want to define success, the guys who come out and are successful, those are the guys who educated themselves and who prepared themselves to be out. The guys who are unsuccessful, they go in there and they did their time. That was it. That's what they did. They did their time. There is very little opportunity for things in there now. So when they come out, the only thing that they know is what they had in there. I had a guy, I don't want to say his name, but he came into a hardened house, and every time he had a difficult problem, his thing was, I ought to go back to jail. I said, what? You need to go back. I said, man, I can't even imagine myself ever saying that I ought to go back to jail. There is nothing in jail that makes your life better than you have it out here. Even if you're in a box, if you live in a box out here, you got it much better than you would have it in jail. You know, so I didn't understand it, but I understood why he said it. Because he was comfortable in jail. He lived there. He don't live here.
Mm-hmm.
He just exists out here. In there, he actually lived. He was somebody. Out here, you nobody, because people don't recognize the same things that they recognize in there.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, you have guys that are going to make it. You have a lot more that are not going to make it because they can't get beyond back there.
Okay, my last question before we turn it over to for others to ask questions. With the current climate, renewed focus on racial equity, increased interest in criminal justice reform, we see more increased interest in building solidarity with prisoners. For those who are looking for more information, looking to get involved, do you have any recommendations?
I would suggest that they communicate with someone who's incarcerated.
Hey, they can always come to JHA for that.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to understand their problem, you know, you can't talk to you and I now because I'm not there now and I don't actually know what's going on now to the point beyond of what I'm being told. But the guys who are in there are guys who are in there who would gladly, you know, speak on these issues and who would gladly, you know, share with them. But to truly understand what these guys are going through in there, you would have to actually talk to those guys that are in there, because they would give you an insight much greater than I could give you the insight of what happened to me, you know. And what happened to me, I wouldn't wish on anybody else, you know, because it's real difficult when you think you're doing the right things and you getting your life together, like they say, get it together, and you're being punished because of the profession you chose. And that's what I experienced. As a law clerk, I've had my law books taken. I've been placed in segregation. I've been put in a cell with psychotic individuals, hoping that something would happen to me. All of it, you know, I look back at it now and I am surprised that I'm not insane. I am very surprised that I'm not insane, because I went through some hard times up in there, and some times that were uncertain, completely uncertain. Sometimes you can be certain about what's going to happen day in and day out in those prisons to you. But when you start doing things that I did as a law clerk, and that certainty goes out of the window.
Yeah. Well, so I'm hearing you say, educate ourselves about the realities of what's going on, the experience of others, and then amplify those voices. And I want to take some questions from the audience, but first I'll say thanks. I appreciate the Young Professionals Board to provide this opportunity to educate ourselves about your experience and to amplify your voice. So much appreciated. But I'll turn it over to questions now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you both. This was really insightful, and just Coleman, you're just like a wealth of stories, and I love listening to you talk. So we did have a few questions come in. Someone asked, how does the work done by a law clerk differ from what is done by a lawyer or a public defender?
I would say it differs. If you have a law clerk that understands what he's doing and does it well, the only thing that makes it different is presentation, who's presenting it, and how it's going to be looked at by the court. With a good law clerk, even if he presents a well-placed argument, you got to get a judge now who's willing to accept that argument and take it and do something. If you have a lawyer present that same argument, a judge or they're more likely to do more than they would just, them. And that was my situation with Stanley, Leslie Stanley. The magistrate said no, appealed to the judge, and he overruled the magistrate, and he said, we're appointing counsel to this one because there's a valid argument and so forth. So if you have a valid argument, a law clerk have valid, that doesn't mean that he's going to get anything. I fought a case, I'm telling you, a civil case for 2003 to 2017, 14 years in a state court where they tried to dismiss it every chance that they got, but they couldn't. So if I could surmount and go past dismissal attempts, I should have had a hearing. I should have had the case resolved long before 14 years. And they waited till I missed one day and threw it out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't catch the train and go to Springfield.
Yeah. Is the problem with law library access the policies themselves, or are the policies okay, but the facilities just aren't following them?
Well, some of the policies, the written policies, because there are two sets of policies.
Okay.
Written policies would be okay. Now, the unwritten policy is the one that that's the obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
And it prevents the written policy from having any meaning. Yeah. You can fight it on that, but it means nothing.
How did you get started becoming a law clerk?
My own case.
Really?
Yeah, my own case. Like I said, I knew that I didn't get a fair shake. I didn't know how it was done. And when I did figure it out, and it was, I could knock myself upside the head for not being able to see that there was a difference between a identification procedure and identification. So I got shafted with an identification procedure, and I couldn't argue disparities in that identification. So that made me pursue it and made me really try to learn what it was about so that I could fight my own case, really, and then in the process I was fighting other cases.
That's great. Just have a couple more and then we'll finish up. Other than being a law clerk, what other jobs in prison do you think prepared people for employment once they were released? Or what jobs should they have?
Well, you got a lot of things. If guys would get the electricians, you work with the electrician for a year. Out here, if you work with an electrician for a year, you become an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
In there, you know, they're not letting you know that you can work with an electrician for a year there and still get an apprentice status out here. So you don't have the knowledge that you can carry certain things. So in there, you have opportunities. Some guys have opportunities, you know, but they don't know about them because nobody's educating them about them. I try to tell guys, okay, you worked in the dining room there. Okay, let's pursue your food handler's card, because in the state of Illinois, you cannot work in a kitchen without a food handler's card. So if you got a food handler's card, that means you can parlay that food handler's card you got from the state out here and get a job as a food handler because you already have a state certified food handler's card. Oh,
I did not know that. We have a request from one of our board members if you would be open to joining the board of John Howard Association. Gotten a request.
Yes.
All right. Can definitely put you in touch with them. That's all we have. Thank you so much, Coleman. Thank you, Katie. Thank you for everyone that's joining. And I'll put up a screen for JHA's website again for those that maybe missed it in the beginning. And we'll be sending out a survey too. Like I said, this was our first virtual event, so anything we could have done better, we're open to suggestion, and we'll look out for more from us. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank all of you.
Bye.